Picture a walk through your neighborhood at night. Maybe you feel a little uneasy. Maybe you clutch your keys between your fingers just in case. But realistically, the scariest thing out there is an aggressive raccoon or someone's unleashed Labrador. Now rewind a few 100,000 years. Same walk. Except now there are lions bigger than the ones alive today, saber-toothed cats with 8-inch canines, hyenas that hunted in packs, and you're not holding keys, you're holding a sharpened stick, and you weigh maybe 130 pounds soaking wet. By every reasonable measure, humans should not have made it. We're slow, we're weak, we don't have claws, fangs, or fur thick enough to matter. And yet here we are, top of the food chain, while species with every physical advantage over us went extinct. So, what did we actually have that they didn't? The answer isn't strength, it's something much stranger. Let's start with just how outmatched we really were, because it's worse than you think. Paleontologists have found evidence that early hominins were regularly preyed upon. The famous Tong child fossil, a roughly 2.8 million year old juvenile Australopithecus discovered in South Africa, shows puncture marks in the skull consistent with talon damage. Researchers believe it was killed by a large bird of prey, likely an eagle. Not a lion, not a saber-tooth. A bird, we weren't just occasionally at risk. For a huge chunk of our evolutionary history, we were regularly on the menu. So how does a species that was regularly hunted by eagles end up running the planet? Here's where it gets strange, because our actual survival advantage wasn't physical at all. It was social, and it happened somewhere nobody expected. Anthropologists studying modern hunter-gatherer groups, including work by researcher Polly Wiesner on the Juhansi San people of the Kalahari, found something telling about how ancient humans likely spent their evenings. During the day, conversations were mostly practical, food, tasks, minor disputes. But at night, round the fire, conversation shifted dramatically towards storytelling, myth, and shared history. Here's why that matters more than it sounds like it should. Firelight extends the day. It gives a group hours of safe, well-lit time to sit together, share information, and build the kind of trust and coordination that daytime survival tasks don't leave room for. A campfire wasn't just warmth. It was a nightly classroom, and the curriculum was how to survive tomorrow. But sitting around a fire doesn't stop a lion. So what actually kept the predators away once the storytelling ended? Now here's the part nobody talks about. Controlled fire didn't just provide light, it rewrote the rules of nighttime entirely. Archaeological evidence from Wonderwork Cave in South Africa shows controlled fire use dating back roughly 1 million years, among the earliest solid evidence we have. And the effect on predator behavior was almost immediate, evolutionarily speaking. Large nocturnal predators are, with very few exceptions, deeply averse to open flame. A group with a maintained fire wasn't hiding from lions. It was actively pushing them out of its territory every single night. Fire didn't just keep humans warm, it functionally reassigned who owned the night. That's a massive advantage. But fire alone doesn't explain the daytime. Out in the open, under the sun, with no flames to hide behind, how did a slow, clawless primate avoid becoming lunch? But wait! What about hunting in broad daylight, fully exposed with nothing but sticks? That should have been a massacre. This is where it gets almost unbelievable. Some researchers, including physiologist Dennis Bramble and biologist Daniel Lieberman, have studied a trait almost no other large mammal has. Humans are exceptional endurance runners. We have sweat glands instead of relying primarily on panting. We run efficiently on two legs, and we can maintain a steady pace over extreme distances in ways that outlast almost any four-legged predator or prey animal in punishing heat. This enabled something called persistence hunting, still practiced by some Kalahari hunters today, chasing an animal not to outrun it in a sprint, but to simply keep pursuing it for hours in the heat of the day until the animal overheats and collapses from exhaustion. Humans weren't the fastest predator on the savannah. We were the most stubborn, so the sun that should have exposed us ended up being one of our best weapons. Which raises an obvious question. If we were this well adapted, why does nearly every ancient culture on Earth still have myths about being hunted, stalked, and devoured? Because here's the counterexample. For most of our history, we didn't feel safe, and that fear left fingerprints everywhere. Anthropologist Donna Hart and paleontologist Robert Sussman argued in their research that predation pressure fundamentally shaped early human social behavior, pushing toward larger group sizes, vocal communication, and vigilance, precisely because being hunted was a constant, background reality, not an occasional threat. That fear didn't just disappear once we got good at survival. It got baked into culture instead, into folklore about monsters in the dark, into a near-universal childhood instinct to fear what's under the bed, into the very human habit of glancing over your shoulder on an empty street. We didn't outmuscle the predators. We outorganized, outlasted, and outremembered them. And the anxiety that got us here never fully clocked out. And that's really the whole story. Once you strip away the myths of humans as natural-born apex hunters, a fire does not fight the lion. It simply tells the lion this ground is no longer his. A group does not outrun the cheetah, it simply refuses to be caught alone. A story told at night does not defeat the predator. It teaches the next generation exactly how to survive the ones still out there. We were never the strongest animal in the grass. We were the ones who remembered, who gathered, who refused to face the dark by ourselves. That's the actual inheritance. Not claws, not speed, memory, cooperation, and the refusal to go it alone. So what about the exceptions? Because surely some early humans didn't have access to fire, large groups, or any of this. Not every early hominin population had these advantages equally, and that gap shows up starkly in the fossil record. Species like Homo naledi or various Australopithecines, without the same scale of cooperative behavior or consistent fire use that Homo sapiens eventually mastered, largely went extinct, while our specific lineage, armed with better social coordination and technology, persisted. Being biologically human wasn't the deciding factor. Behaving like a coordinated, fire-wielding, story-sharing human was, survival was never guaranteed by species alone. It had to be earned, generation after generation, by the groups that figured out cooperation before the predators figured out them. So, back to that nighttime walk through your neighborhood. You've got streetlights instead of a fire pit, locked doors instead of a rotating night watch, a phone in your pocket instead of a spear. But that flicker of unease you feel walking past a dark alley, that instinct to want company rather than solitude after sunset, that's not irrational. That's an inheritance. Encoded from a few 100,000 years of very real reasons to be afraid of the dark. We didn't survive the predators because we were strong. We survived because we were never ever willing to face them alone.